Welcome everybody to the welcome everybody to the Thirsk and Malton Area Committee. A special welcome, obviously, to David Skaith, the Mayor for York and North Yorkshire, and to James Farrer, who's the CEO of the Combined Authority. I'd also like to welcome Councillor Peter Chapman, who will be speaking in the public session later from Shipton by Benningborough. So with that, Nikki, have we had any apologies for absence? Okay, so we've got apologies from Councillor Duncan, and I think we've also got apologies from Councillor Dad, and Councillor Annabelle Wilkinson, who is an associate member. She's also given me her apologies. So we'll move on now to the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of November. Has anybody got any comments on the accuracy of those minutes? So are you all happy that we adopt those by? Yeah, you propose? Yeah, thank you. We've got a seconder. Thank you, Malcolm. So all in favour? Thank you very much. Oh, okay, yeah. So Councillor Burt abstains. So has anybody got any declarations of interest on the agenda items? Councillor Burt.
Thank you, Chair. I work in education, so if we stray into any education matters, I've declared an interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's noted. Okay, so we're now. Sorry, well, Dan, did you? No? Okay. So now come to the annual update by David Skaith, the Mayor of York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority. So, David, thank you very much for attending this morning.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for having me. Nice to see everyone. I'll just do like a brief overview to begin with, if that's okay, and then I'll bring James in my chief exec to kind of go a bit over what devolution kind of is for us and what it kind of means and what we've been up to, and then from there I'll kind of run through a whole list of plans that we've already been implementing and the direction of go. That's okay. So you just get a good sense where we're going from an organisation, and then where as mayor we've sort of been coming through as well. So it's sort of the heart of everything I'm looking to do as mayor really is right across York and North Yorkshire is to develop healthy and resilient communities that connect people to opportunity, particularly focusing on warm, affordable homes where people can be connected to the outdoors, and particularly we're creating safe places for all. So as you'll be aware, as Mayor, as a Combined Authority, we also take responsibility of the OPFCC. So we have the police and fire function as well, which I think we're only one of two Combined Authorities, I think, that have full police and fire as well. And I think we are the first that actually had that from the very beginning. So it's quite a unique opportunity around that. And also the geographical makeup of our Combined Authority, as you will all be aware, sat in this room, we're not a heavy urbanised core city centre like a Manchester, Liverpool or a London. We are a heavily rural region as well with coastal, and again that's kind of the first Combined Authority it's really been set up that way. So it's quite a unique opportunity. It definitely does create challenges around how we deliver the affordability of homes, the improvement of transport connectivity, how we get skills out to all our population, how we combat challenges around police and fire, which we've obviously had we've been doing a lot of work on over the first few months. So it does make it a challenging because of the geography, but it does give us a unique opportunity and perspective of how we can move forward. Also, just on that, if we look at the direction of where Combined Authorities are going from now onwards, they are much more geographically set up like us. In terms, if you look at Hull and East Yorkshire, you look at Greater Links, you look at Cumbria and others that are coming on this year and next year. Their geography is much more aligned to what we are. So we're having lots of conversations with government about how we are kind of the first of the next trench of regions, and how you're going to deliver devolution away from a core city, which is how devolution has been set up traditionally. It's obviously much easier to improve skills, access or opportunities for work in a city like a Manchester or Birmingham or Liverpool than it is in places like Malton or Thirsk or Hamswaite or something like that. So it does make it challenging, but a challenge that we are here to take on. I'll link into James now just to kind of go through what devolution really means for those who may not be up to speed on that, and then I'll loop back into just to go through what we've been up to over the last 10 months or so.
Thank you, David. So just a few kind of reminders. So, and obviously a lot of you know a lot of this. Devolution is about transfer of powers and funding from national central government down to the local area, so that decisions are made close to the people who they affect. I think what's important to look at, if you look at where devolution is and look at where government's announced it now, the whole of the north will be covered by devolution, and I think that's quite significant, really, because when you look at the kind of the ongoing battle to increase the amount of investment in the north and out of the southeast, the better the north is able to speak with one voice and have that deep reach into government, the stronger we're going to be. So the fact that we're ahead of the curve with regard to that, and like David said, we're a rural trailblazer, I think is really important, and we need to make sure that we kind of don't lose that sense of ambition, and we kind of keep pushing forward really hard on that. So we're in a good place in that, like I say, we were the first combined authority to be created and elect a mayor within 4 months of being created. We're the first combined authority to bring the Police, Fire and Crime Commission in at the same time on day one of the combined authority. We're one of only 2 combined authority which has got the fire bit in there, and we're the first combined authority to elect a mayor and then have a change of government within 6 weeks. So in reality, you know, it was a pretty amazing achievement by the region, and I think it's important to remember that word combined. We're combined authority, so it's about bringing together the combined capability of the region. So North Yorkshire Council, York Council, but actually all the other stakeholders across the region are really fundamentally important to our success. So that's where we're at. If you just remind of the timeline, so the devolution deal was agreed with government on Yorkshire Day 2022, so the 1st of August 2022. We were created in January 24, and like I say, David was elected in May last year. He has ultimately 2 responsibilities. He took on the role of the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, and to see that out, he appointed a Deputy Mayor for Police, Fire and Crime, which is Joe Coles, and the other side of it is about economic growth, and he's responsible for economic growth and what that does. And it's important that when we look at that, we understand that in the context of York and North Yorkshire geography. You know, David alluded to the fact that we are very different to Manchester and West Yorkshire and the West Midlands. We're over 3,000 square miles. And that makes it really challenging. I think we've over 30 towns, and obviously got 2 cities. Mustn't forget Ripon's a city alongside the city of York. But the challenge is very different because in a large metropolitan area, you are trying to connect everything in. In a large rural area, actually your connections out are just as important as how you connect within the region. So it's quite a different challenge. And therefore it means that we've got to work differently with government, because a lot of the government policy was designed for the urban areas, and then they're trying to retrofit it into the rural areas. So as David said, we're a rural trailblazer. We are much more like the combined authorities that are coming on. So we're a great place for government to develop new policy and trial that, and we're very much trying to position ourselves with government. Just giving you the headlines of what the deal was. So the headline of the deal was always the Mayoral Investment Fund, which was £18 million a year for 30 years. So that's 540 million. But to put that in kind of a little bit of context of the rest of the funding. So if you look at the funding we will have in 2025-26, there'll be about 60 million of transport money will go through the combined authority. There'll be £25 million of skills money will go through the combined authority. There'll be about £8 million of shared prosperity fund will go through the combined authority. So whilst the Mayoral Investment Fund is about £18 million a year, in the scale of the investment the combined authority does, it is a relatively small proportion of that, and which is why we shouldn't just look at the Mayor's Investment Fund as the be all and end all. It's actually there to kind of build the pipeline and create the opportunities. But a lot of the investment will come from other areas. And one of our key jobs is constantly to work with government to try and secure new investment and more investment. And the powers that we're responsible for as a combined authority are transport, business, net zero, skills and housing and place across there from that point of view. And our job is to create the regional strategies, create the ambition and vision for the region, go and secure the money and the investment, and then work with partners to deliver on those investments from that point of view. So I think if you look at that from where we've come from, the challenge, you look at the scale of what we're responsible for now and what we're investing, it's a pretty sizable kind of responsibility that David as Mayor has got within York and North Yorkshire. And on that, I'll pass back to David just to talk about some of what we've achieved in the first 10 months, but also some of the things that we're looking to develop going forwards.
Thanks, James. Yeah, so last sort of 10 months, what we've been up to, and extra funding that we've received and been able to bring in. So to begin with, you may be aware that £5 million was given to the 2 local authorities to split between projects that they wanted to bring forward. Those are in motion. We've also given 1.5 million of the Great Places funding. That's to enable both North Yorkshire and City of York to develop a plan for every town, and then £1 million supporting those projects to come through. So not only giving the money to actually create a pipeline of projects, but actually having then some money behind those projects to go and push forward. So making sure that we are reaching out to every town and area right across York and North Yorkshire. James touched on there. We initially got just over 12 million to support brownfield housing. I topped that up with an extra 4.6 million from the Mail Investment Fund to unlock further housing opportunities. That's going to deliver just over 1,000 homes across the patch, which are over half of these are truly affordable as well, which is great to see. We are seeking to make this funding much more flexible around the brownfield housing because, as I said, one of the challenges is currently, I'm going to blind it here, was the fact that brownfield housing, again, that pipeline of money comes through, has been traditionally delivered through a core city region, and obviously, as we know, so many our opportunities are away from our core city. So we are in conversations with government about having more flexibility around that money, and obviously North Yorkshire Council are progressing with its local plan, and obviously we look forward to working closely with them to identify further sites across the region. We initially in the devolution deal had £7 million for net zero projects, which has been taken up really well, and we are really moving very quickly around the net zero direction. We want to be a region that meets net zero by 2034 and goes beyond and becomes carbon negative by 2040. Again, we feel like the geography of our region lends itself to being able to get to that target. So again, that's a USP. That's something we can do that we know a lot of the larger core city regions won't be able to get there. We also expanded on the UK SBF funding that North Yorkshire were delivering to start with, but then I freed up just under £600,000 extra to take on 20 further projects, which were really looking at community buildings and how we can support those. 5 of those projects were actually in this patch, so that's good to see. One of which, so that's Rydell's Special Families, for example, which is one I went to only a few weeks ago. So of those 20, having 5 in your patch, you've done quite well out of that, to be fair. So well done to you. So further opportunities that we've secured through devolution is a £2 million energy infrastructure pilot, a £1 million pilot for local investment in natural capital, which has been delivered by NYC. So thank you for that. We also secured £10 million of a skills trailblazer to address people who are out of work through long-term sickness. So we are going to produce that piece of work. I think it's next month, and that will go live from the 12th of April, I believe it is. So that's in-year spend of 10 million, which is going to be a real press for us. But obviously, working with organisations that are already delivering work around that, and both local authorities, is how we're going to be getting that out the door quickly. Because we already have about another £12 million going into skills, so just over 22 million going into skills this year in our region is money we've never seen go into skills before. So that's a great place to be, and a £3 million annual Connect to Work program as well. So again, just expanding on the skills area. Terms of funds that I've put together and we've launched, we've spent just over 27.5 million on Mail Investment funding. So one of those was the £10 million for vibrant and sustainable high streets. The first call for those projects closed last week. We've had over 41 initial applications in, which is great to see. I don't know how many of those are from this patch, by the way. That's just early figures that came in on Friday, but that's a really good take up of an average project of about £30,000. So that's really good to see investments going into our high streets. Carbon negative challenge fund of 10 million. Again, the initial call for that first strand of funding finished last week, and that's been well oversubscribed, which is again great to see. And that's a challenge fund that's really looking at how we work with private sector, particularly to look at carbon negative business proposals, really. So that's great to see. Skills Innovation Fund, again, extra money into skills. So that's 2.5 million. So that's really supporting our colleges, our training providers, to up their ability to teach the core skills of industry that we're going to need in our region. We speak to a lot of businesses time and time again who we create a very high quality of young person's education in our patch. We're very fortunate to have some brilliant schools, colleges, universities, training providers, but they're not always aligning the skills to the industry that we need. So it's making sure that we're lining that up. So having extra money to go into that is really good to see. And our business innovation fund of £5 million. So again, that's a fund to support businesses to become more have, you know, to be able to expand, grow. And the really good thing about that innovation fund is that's aimed at businesses of employees of just one person and upwards. A lot of time when you get funds like that, it's geared to much more medium and large size businesses. But we know overwhelming majority of our businesses in our patch are small and micro. So having a fund that's directly supporting them is very good to see. On a wider level of what I've been doing, been obviously spending a lot of time with government. So we have quarterly meetings with the Prime Minister, as I'm a member of the Council of Nations and Regions, quarterly meetings with Angela Rayner as a member of the Mayoral Council for England, direct relationship with Treasury, the Minister for Housing, Communities and Local Government, Department for Business and Trade, who we had a meeting with yesterday. And our region actually has a dedicated member from each of those departments that's linked into us. So again, that's something that we haven't had before. And we're also a member of the UK Mayors Group. So that's where all the mayors come together, collectively talk about how great our region is compared to another region. And we've also, you'd have seen maybe 2 weeks ago, I think it was now, we signed the White Rose Pact with South and West Yorkshire mayors to develop opportunities around the wider part of Yorkshire, particularly focused on the minute around our rail connectivity and how we can support that as well. From there, some of the pieces of work that we've also commissioned in the process of. So we've commissioned a strategic review of transport across the region, obviously working with both York and North Yorkshire on that. We launched a strategic place partnership with Homes England, again, something we haven't had before. We've established a business board, which has been fantastic to have representation, not from different sectors, but a geographical spread as well. We're in the final process of finishing off our innovation plan with Innovate UK, which will be linked into the innovation fund. So not just having a plan, but having a funding behind it. We're in the process of commissioning a review into the future of farming, as we've identified agriculture, food and farming as our key growth, or one of our key growth priorities. So we've commissioned a piece of work around that as well. We're also building a case to have an AI growth zone in our patch as well, which is something that government has gone for calls out, and they're looking for 4 or 5 of these AI growth zones. So we are hopefully going to be in the running, but we'll have to wait and see. And we've submitted our comprehensive spending review submission to maximise the future funding for our region, which is geared around our growth plans. And the 10-year growth priority will be finalised in the springtime. As James touched on there, we've also responsibility for the police and crime plan and fire and rescue plan, which will be the police one will be launched on Monday and the fire one the following week. So that's a new police and fire rescue plans for the region. On policing, we're prioritising neighbourhood policing, tackling violence against women and girls, serious violence strategy, increasing early intervention and prevention work, which we've already doubled the amount of money that's going into early intervention and prevention work, and rebuilding public confidence in our police force. And fire is ensuring that effective response, targeted prevention, and making sure that we are prepared better for major incidents, and understanding that what our fire and rescue service now has to deal with is very different to what it may have done with 10 or 15 years ago in terms of increasing flooding, increasing wildfires, increase of electric vehicles that they have to deal with. So our fire services has had to really adapt. So we have put money together to support that ongoing work. And I see members here from the police fire crime panel, and I welcome the feedback and support they've given on that as well. Where we really are, and James said, we're looking at really sort of pushing that agenda that we want to be a rural trailblazer, the first of a new breed of combined authority, so away from a core city, so doing things in a rural context. I would say that no government has really ever understood rural and how we support in a rural nature, how we build homes, how we access people to skill, how we look at healthcare, how we grow the economy. So we sort of feel ourselves as a bit of a new breed, and that's how we can show how that's done. Around transport, we are seeking a long-term sustainable funding allocation. We've just been granted £97 million for transport and roads, which is great. and I welcome that money into it, but we need that longer term settlement as well, which we're working towards. Around housing, we're working with local authority partners in Home England, say, to develop a strategic place plan to identify those key housing areas, because we know we have 10,000 people waiting on a housing list, and that's not good enough, and that should not be accepted. So we're going to be doing something about it. And we know government have very bold ambitions around 1 million homes to be built in this Parliament. And I welcome the £600 million into skills, because we know that's going to be one of the biggest hindrances to building those homes, is actually the skill set. Through our CSR submission, we are seeking a DEFRA hub at York Central site and an innovation accelerator status for that as well, so we can really bring some really look at that innovation, the expertise, and really grow what we're offering in our patch. Skills, we're seeking further devolution of adult skills. In particular, we would love to push for devolution of adult skills from younger age, from 16 plus. We feel like we're missing a trick. We have adult skills funding from 19. We feel like we have an opportunity to work with younger people from 16 onwards, so we can really target that workforce earlier on. And as I said, around energy and net zero, we are seeking to really ramp up the scale of particularly retrofitting and expanding our sustainability, our farm sustainability program, which has been a real success so far, and how we can look at developing an energy system that right across and supports everyone across the region. And breathe. It's been busy 10 months, is kind of what I'm saying.
It certainly sounds it. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, David. So I think at this part, what I'll do is I'll open it up to questions from members, if you're okay with that.
I have had questions come through if you want.
Okay, do you want to run through the writtens first, and then we'll take the...
Yeah,
I think that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So kind of the first question I've got, I hope these are right from you guys. How might you focus on regeneration in urban areas, encouraging economic growth in rural areas? So as I say, I am the first predominantly rural mayor of a rural region, and we've been sort of particularly keen to get it across the government that if we want to see economic growth and opportunity, it has to be everywhere, not just in the core cities. And we have a great opportunity, because we don't just have a urban area, we have the rural and the coastal opportunities, and we know particularly our coastal communities have really been left behind. So we're working to make sure that devolution is felt right across the region. As I said, with our growth plan, recognises our region's strengths, particularly looking at the whole food system, farm and agricultural sectors, and bioengineering. And we see this as a real unique strength for us that no other region is talked about. And so when we're speaking to government, particularly around these sectors, we're the ones putting our hands up and say, if you want to come and develop plans or invest in these sectors, then we are the place that's coming to do it. And we know, not just in the last 10 months, but in my time of campaigning and knocking on doors across the region, we know we have a huge challenge with maintaining our young people in our region. We know that's through a lack of skills aligned to industry, a lack of affordable housing, and poor transport connectivity. So as we said, we have responsibility over those things now, so we can really have that joined up approach to how we target the challenges that we have. The second question that I had through was the need for improving, developing strategic sustainable transport links. For example, I'll just read the quote. For example, a 16,000 homes new settlement in Hubie and Tollerton division is planned just off the A19, and the Mayor's plans for housing and industrial development on the former RAF base at Linton-on-Ouse. If we're going to have these large-scale developments, then how is this issue of improving the infrastructure and transport network to access them going to be addressed? The access of Linton-on-Ouse from the 59 is via a single-lane toll bridge with a weight restriction. As I said, we're establishing a strategic place partnership with Homes England and the City of York and North Yorkshire Council to address these issues. And we know that many housing developments are currently held back by the infrastructure challenges, particularly around the road, the connectivity, access to the grid, water, and everything else as well. We expect developers to engage with planners, particularly to address these concerns, and for Section 106 money to be used to ensure that the impact of construction of large house developers is minimised. I'm also working closely with NYC here as they develop the local plan to ensure we have a good idea of where the barriers of future development is. And I think that's the really key one, is we're involved early on. So when we develop new housing plans or strategies, is the combat authorities with the levers that we have as well, that we're involved very early on in this, so we can develop the plans, and we can look at where strategic housing is going to be, how we link that into our transport system. So we're not building homes in areas that are not connected to anything, and that's not what anybody wants to do, because it just exacerbates the problems that we already see in our region. Update on the delivery of net zero sustainable development and examining the implementation of sustainable development goals, which both York and North Yorkshire have signed up to. I touched on quite a lot of this earlier on in the areas that we're already pushing on with. We're well underway of our local net zero accelerator programme, which is looking to support 3 pilot places to replicate the City Leap model, which, if those of you don't know, is which is worked really well in Bristol. I highly recommend people going to look at that and see what they've been doing in Bristol around the City Leap programme, and that's something that we're developing here in York and North Yorkshire. Local investment in the Natural Capital Programme, which is a DEFRA funded programme to support 4 pilot areas, which has been great to see and attract investment to improve natural capital. I was at one of the events last week. It was really good to see the work that's gone into that. As I said, we are in the process of refreshing our route map to carbon negative, which was developed just before I came into office. And that's looking at how we get to become net zero by 2034. So we've put some money behind that just to have a refresh of that, because we were slightly conscious that things had really developed over last year quite quickly in a positive way, but also was there enough emphasis in that net zero, in that route map to net zero, particularly around transport. So we want to be the first region that achieves that and carbon negative, as I said, by 2040. And this is currently quite literally live now, a document going through stakeholder consultation before wider public consultation, which will be in a few weeks' time. And we're also launching that alongside our retrofit strategy, which is being co-designed by both York and North Yorkshire, which will be ready in October time. Question 4, can York take more of the housing allocation? That's really a conversation with a CYC, I would imagine. But as we say, we do know we have significant sites across North Yorkshire. Has just been announced yesterday. You may have seen 1,300 housing allocation over in Ripon, which has been fast tracked, and that's the engagement that we've had with the MOD on that. So that's great to see. But as we say, it's making sure that the infrastructure and everything else comes with that. But as I've spent a lot of time over this patch, I'm sure many people in this room have, the need for affordable and social homes is absolutely crucial to our region. Oh, that's better. But we are calling for the flexibility around the brownfield housing funds. We have more flexibility on that and how we develop housing in particularly our smaller areas. And I said, when we've got 10,000 people waiting on a housing list, I don't think that's acceptable. And I like to think no one in this room thinks that's acceptable. So housing is a key element, and to provide safe and warm housing for our people is my number one aim on that. Will the police contribute to the funding of the CCTV in the Scarborough and Rydell areas? The CCTV provision, I would say, and Joe Coles, who's been leaning on us as well, it really isn't good enough. I understand that North Yorkshire are conducting a view following the bringing together of all the local areas. Is the responsibility of North Yorkshire Council currently. However, there are needs and demands really to have a shared responsibility of that and how we develop the security surveillance across the patch. Jo Coles, my deputy mayor, if any of you have had the pleasure of meeting, she's currently commissioned a piece of work to ensure a better alignment of CCTV across the region and look at how it can be mirrored in the control room across the region. Currently, this only happens in the CCTV in York, so it's not good enough, frankly. So we are commissioning a piece of work to improve that. Will the mayor, that's me, lobby central government on ensuring sustainable local government funding? Yes, is the answer. If you want me to expand on that, as I say, as the Combat Authority, we are in receipt of central government funding as well, and we are also looking for long-term sustainable funding. We know local authorities have really been hit hard over many years, and it's making sure that we all have long-term sustainable funding so we can be clear of our direction of what we want to achieve, and sort of just get rid of that competitive bidding process of how money has been generally divvied up previously.
Thank you very much for answering those, David. So I've got questions so far from the floor from George, Sam, Caroline and Michelle. I've got Steve there. and Greg. Okay, so George, would you like to kick off?
Thank you very much for joining us this morning and attending this meeting. That's extremely helpful, and the fact that you took questions beforehand, very, very useful. I was yesterday at the Care and Independence Overview and Scrutiny Committee of North Yorkshire Council, and the issue that about the Getting Britain Working Trailblazer was raised there, and I think you touched on it earlier. The £10 million that has been secured, which is a great initiative, of course. So as a result, I mentioned to them that you were going to come to this committee today. So because of that, I have few requests, and the first one is to highlight the differences and the unique nature of North Yorkshire versus the City of York. I believe that a lot of work has been taking place at the moment to try to find the right bids for North Yorkshire for that pot of money of the £10 million. And some of the uniqueness that are specific to North Yorkshire, more so than the City of York, include the unpaid carers, the military veterans, as well as the very rural areas such as in Rydale and Hambleton, which are covered by this area committees. And on top of that, the comprehensive wraparound support to SMEs and larger employers. So within that framework, I was wondering first if there are any possibilities for that fund to be recurring on an annual basis, because at the moment, as you mentioned, it is has to be spent within a year. And I was wondering again if that's something that could be discussed with the government to see if the investment could take more than a year for it to be implemented, because maybe 12 months is a short period of time for such an important thing to be implemented, but hopefully, more importantly, it would be something that's going to be recurrent. And the final
George,
point is, how do you
Can we speed it up?
rural coastal areas and the City of York when you are spending that £10 million?
Thank you for the question. That Trailblazer has been delivered in partnership with both York and North Yorkshire, so officers from both sides, or on the same side, let's be honest, are actually, I didn't mean that. Slip of the tongue. All together, aren't we, Cal? Officers are feeding into that. So projects are already being delivered because, as you say, as frustrating as it sounds, to spend £10 million in a year into a new program is actually really difficult, because you have to develop something, spend it, and then you've got to ramp it down, because you can't just put it off at the knees after 364 days. So our plan is to overwhelmingly use both York and North Yorkshire and what they are delivering now to really maintain those and ramp those up, giving us a little bit of leeway to have some different ways of working, maybe, and having that sort of little bit of percentage of there where we can work at slight risk and maybe trial new things, because this is meant to be a trial of doing things in a new way. But as we said, it has been raised with all CAs to do this inside 12 months is difficult. There has been calls to extend it over 18 months. We want to be quite bold and ambitious in our patch and kind of go, okay, if you're going to give us that money and that's the time frame, then we will go and do it, because that's kind of just the way that me and James function, really, to be honest. We're just crack on. But we are determined, and we know we will get that out the door, and we are using partners to actually build that framework. So it's not going to be going off into random places. What CYC and NYC have already been delivering is where that money will go to. If it will be on an annual recurring basis, we don't know, but we think probably it'll be the direction it will go in. I don't know that for definite, but obviously you have a Trailblazer, you trial it, you see if it works well. If it does, then it will carry on. So we're confident-ish that it will carry on, but there's no guarantee of that yet. We are working on the parameters that it's that much money, deliver it in a year, get it out the door, and we will be using partners who are already delivering most of that work already to go and do that.
Very much for this. That's very reassuring and very positive.
Thank you very much. So, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Really, firstly, I want to wish you a big success, you know what I mean? Because one of the things that we're all here is we want York and North Yorkshire to do well. And at the helm of it, you know what I mean, you're our man, sort of thing, for want of a better expression. So I wish you a big success, because we all want a vibrant North Yorkshire. One of the things that you did mention is you mentioned the coast, and I represent a little place called Filey, or as I would like to think of it, a big place called Filey. And sadly, it's been sort of left behind in recent years. And one of the ways it has been left behind is by community transport. And I believe you've been sent a picture of probably Filey's little bus that's no longer working and no longer supporting the community. And today, an announcement was made that 2.15 billion, not million, billion were going to be spent on transport for the north. And I would like to have some of that. As you're probably aware, the bus bill is going through currently. And clause 12 of the bus bill says that what it would like to do is reinstate previous routes previously operated by Olympic coaches, which it says on the side of the F2, F3 and 4, to allow it to link in with your own plans of developing transport in the Filey area, so we can be in contact with bus stations, rail stations and medical centres. So out of the big pot of money you've got, I'd like a little bit, David, please. I have spoke to Graham North about it. Yeah. I have spoke to Graham North about it. You know.
Everybody put their hands up at once.
I just want a little pot. I don't.
So thank you for that question. That picture of the Filey bus is on my desk, and I can assure you that I was on my children's lives. That picture is on my desk. So you'll know that we take over responsibility of buses from next week. Initially, we signed over to York and North Yorkshire to begin with, and just to carry on work as was for this previous year, because we just came into office in May and we were just not set up to take on that responsibility. So to make sure there was no loss of service, we just sort of signed that over straight away. So we'll be taking on responsibility for next week. In terms of the funding, we have actually only just had our allocation of funding guaranteed yesterday. So we have been chasing for our settlement of transport. So we are developing our transport plans as we speak, work with both York and North Yorkshire. We have already supported the Moors and Dales bus operations already, and we're looking at expanding into operations like Filey, because we know in terms of whatever route we go down in terms of buses, if it's an EP plus, if it's a full franchise model, whatever it may be, what we do in our region, again, coming back to the geography, is very different to what other regions have done. We can't just roll up a bus model in that, say, Andy Burnham's delivered in Manchester, because in our region, it's just not going to work, and it would cost quite literally a fortune that hundreds of millions wouldn't touch it, quite frankly. So we need to develop a plan that works for us. So is that looking at a part franchise model that covers 2/3 of North Yorkshire, and then we look at operators like Moors, Dales, Filey to pick up that? How do we move people from Filey into larger like depots? So how we take them to like larger bus depots or to train stations, however it may be. So we are exploring all options, but working close with York and North Yorkshire to actually really bring that in. But also now we've got a really unique opportunity, which we wouldn't have had before, is now we look outside of our borders as well, and understand that a lot of our region is leaving on a daily basis and coming back in. So how do we work on that cross-border piece? So a lot of people from Scarborough travelling up to James Cook Hospital as a classic example. How do we improve that? So we're working with other combined authorities on that patch to actually have that joined up approach on how we have porous borders. But certainly looking at operations like Filey, like Moors, like Dales, they're going to be a key part of it, because what we deliver on buses, you're going to have those small operations doing those more unique things well, because you just can't, a really big operator is just not probably going to go and deliver it, quite frankly, because the business case when you're on the coast never adds up, because half of it's in the sea. So it's like you have to, but they are, undoubtedly more important than doing it in, say, like a York, where it's much easier to move people around and there's much more options. If you miss a bus in Filey or somewhere like that, that next bus might be hours later, whereas in somewhere like York or Harrogate or next day, yeah. Whereas if you're in, say, Harrogate or somewhere, it might be 10 minutes later. So if you got an appointment or you go whatever, so it's a key part of it. But I the whole coast, and it's not just our coastline, coastal communities have been left behind forever, and we have almost like a duty of care really as a combined authority now to have coastal representation in our patch to show how you can deliver economic opportunity, you can build houses, you can keep those communities, because those communities will just die. People will leave because they can't stay there. Next generation can't stay there, and they will just fall away. And your GPs close, your school closes, your high streets close, and then they just become ghost towns of second homes. Nobody wants that. It's next generations who are living in Filey now want to be able to stay there, and transport is a really big part of that. 25% of under 25-year-olds don't drive or access to a car. We've also got an Asian population who also aren't driving. So we have this at both ends. It really needs to be supported. If you've got a bus coming a day, it's not good enough, quite frankly. So yeah, it's all on the agenda. Yeah, it's all there. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So Caroline.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hello, David. Thank you for coming this morning. I hear what you're saying. You've suggested we need to have a sense of ambition. We need to have economic growth. We need to have a regional strategy. So could you please help me understand why you can't support the dualling of the A64? Because it is a blight on the people who live around the Hopgrove area, not only on North Yorkshire, but York people as well. And we carry so much trade that comes from West Yorkshire over to the East Coast. It affects our East Coast traders. International companies like McCain struggle to get down the A64 with refrigerated lorries. The buses are delayed. They then change the timetables and don't go into the villages and leave people with no bus service because the A64 is rammed. So I need to understand why you can't support it.
Yeah, sorry, could you just speak? Sorry, if you just move it closer to you,
If
it's probably better, David. Thank you.
That better? Yeah. We have been working with government and we have been talking to government about the importance of the A64 and the A66. But the A66 project's about 1.4 billion minimum, and the A64 is several hundred millions as well. We don't have the money for that currently. And what we do have money and powers over is supporting public transport and active travel. And that's where I have money and that's why I have powers over. So that's why we're exploring that as much as possible. I.e., we're working with TPE to develop a half-hourly train service from York to Scarborough, which would open that entire corridor. So people in places like Malton will be able to get to Scarborough and York and vice versa more quickly. So we're developing that, and we're developing public transport so we can move people more sustainably and en masse much more. I have no doubts that there are challenges on the A64. I've driven it today and yesterday, and it was actually quite smooth, to be honest with you, but I know that's not the case all the time. But when you talk about a project that's several hundred millions of pounds, and it hasn't moved anywhere for 15 years, and we've got to ask ourselves, why is that? When we had a government who were behind it, supposedly, and we had a council who were supposedly supportive of it, I don't know, and you've had MPs in the patch, and you had the Prime Minister of this country for 2 years was in this patch, and it couldn't get delivered. So there's got to be some questions as to why it couldn't be delivered. Now, is that because there wasn't the money? Maybe. Is it because that the Green Book doesn't allow large infrastructure projects like that to add up? If we were talking about an infrastructure project of 10 miles between London and an adjacent place, then obviously that would have a much more financial buy-in because it's impacted more people. Again, coming back to the Filey challenge, is those large infrastructure projects, the numbers don't currently add up because the amount of people it's affecting, even though it's important for us on scale, it doesn't impact the millions of people that a project in 2 core cities would connect. So undoubtedly it is a challenge. It is something we need to be pressing on, and we have raised it again, despite what some people may have said that we haven't been. We have been. It was when I first met Lou Haig on week 2 or 3 of being in post. It was on the list of about 25 transport projects that I did raise with them. But we have to understand that currently that money is probably not there right now. And if it has been, why hasn't it been delivered in the last 15 years? I have powers and money over bus and active travel in particular, and we have a lot of sway, particularly over rail now, with Great British Rail coming on in the next few years, and we are pressing hard with TPE to get that half-hourly train service, which we only had a meeting the other day about. And I think it's not an either or. We can do both. We can press government to say this is an important project for us, as is the A66 dualling around Scots Core and everything else. So we're doing that. But what we have money and powers over is this. So we're ticking over this in the background, but we are ramping up our bus provision and active travel provision at the same time. If I do get the money, then there. But if we don't, then I don't have a cheque for 400 or 500 million to go and dual the road.
Can you assure me, please, that you will keep pushing for the dualling of the A64? Because I understand about the Green Book and I know all the issues, but we are a rural county. We're never going to make it on the Green Book because of the rurality of the district that we live in. But that hampers our growth. It hampers our delivery for our businesses. You know, I hear what you're saying about trains and buses, but you can't put frozen chips on a bus or a train. It doesn't work, and we need to get these companies working so that we get the employment, that people can afford to buy the houses, can afford to live. And right now we're failing miserably. And I don't exclude the Conservatives in this, but we need a different strategy.
Is that coming soon? Oh, sorry. I can't see the green light because the red light even, because of that. But we are all pressing on that. So, again, we have to have the understanding that what we've got powers and control over is this part. If we can move more people in a sustainable way, then it should free up space on the roads so people can move. But I know it is a concern, and we are pressing on it. We had a meeting with the National Infrastructure. I can't remember the last word of the commission. That's the one. Only this week, and again we raised it with them as an A64. So yeah.
Thanks, David. Michelle.
Thank you, Mayor Skate. I represent the part of the area that's probably where rural crosses over into coastal. And while I note what you said in response to Councillor Cross, I was a little bit surprised that in your initial presentation you mentioned coastal once. Now, you mentioned Hull and you mentioned Lincolnshire. They have something in common with us, which is that they have coastal areas that are having the exact same issues. And if you go across the whole country, all coastal areas seem to have the same issues. Some towns are successful, sometimes they're almost too successful. And it's all very, I get where you're coming from on things like Green Book and everything else, but you need a national coastal strategy. And it's great saying you're a rural trailblazer, but you should have been the coastal trailblazer. You should have been out there. You should have been banging the drum for the coast and for the type of political will and leadership it is going to take to change the outcomes on the coast. If we just sit going, well, the books say it is, that's not leadership. That's just repeating the same problems that we've had for decades. And the issue about the A64 is fundamental. You can say dual the A64. The question is, how do I change the outcome on the coast? How do I change what is happening in Scarborough, where there are some of the poorest communities in the whole country? And however you do this, you come down to a point is that actually I need to get investment, I need to improve connectivity. And with all due respect for the poorest people that live in places like Eastfield and everything else, a half-hour train from Scarborough ain't going to cut it. It ain't going to change their lives. It ain't going to get them out of the grinding poverty that they're in. And while I get that dealing with government is like banging your head off against a brick wall, you still haven't stuck your head above the parapet, and other mayors have, and said, actually, this is wrong and we need to look at this differently. The coast matters. The coast across this country is struggling and it needs political leadership. One of the points of having a mayor was that we would get political leadership. Now, you said some things to Councillor Cross, which I don't disagree with, and that was sort of refreshing. But there's been a theme the last couple of weeks. Scarborough and Whitby raised this. I understand it was raised at the Hospitals Trust yesterday about the combined authority not engaging with the coast. So there's a feeling along the coast that the combined authority is not an active presence in the way that people feel they need it to be. You have not been our voice. You have not gone on national television and spoken up for us about the things that we need help for. I accept what you've said here today. A lot of things I agree with, but you should be the one banging the door on national television about what government needs to do for coastal areas. So I'd obviously appreciate your response. Some of the things you said I agree with. I just don't feel you've been strong enough a voice for us.
Thank you for that, and I'll take that on board. We were over in Scarborough yesterday, actually, speaking to business leaders over there. We've done a lot with the TUC over there as well. We are very welcoming of Schneider investing 42 million over in Scarborough as well. We're also looking at a coastal-wide project about how we can best support the coast in particular. We've supported the harbour boat hoist project in Scarborough as well, which we've given £700,000 from the Combined Authority to North Yorkshire to go develop that, and how we can develop that strategy wider. We've also identified food and farming, but that's also fishing, part of that as well. And obviously that's our coastal element, and we see that as our #1 growth priority. We're also looking at the affordability of homes, because we know so much of our region where people can't live, they're having to move away, and particularly our coastal towns. So we're developing how we can support building housing over in Scarborough and Whitby and on the coast as well. We're also developing our skills strategy, which will be incorporating colleges and universities right across the patch, including on the coast, which will support jobs and aligning those to our industry. So as people over on the coast and places like Eastfield have a job, we're also looking at how we can support the skills village over there as well. So how we can ramp that up for enough as well, so we can produce more local jobs, particularly in the building industry, which we need to be doing as well. So I take your point on, but I feel like we, as a Combined Authority, we have been doing quite a lot on the coast. Maybe we can do more. We can always do more. I apologize, I only said the coast once, but we do regularly talk about we are rural, coastal, and urban, and that's a big unique element of us. I will endeavour to do more. It is a really big patch. That's no excuse. I will talk up more then, but I think a lot of our plans are not just geared towards an area. It's geared across the whole region. If we improve the affordability of homes, if we improve transport connectivity, I take your point that a half-hourly train is not going to transform Scarborough, but it's not going to help. You know, it's certainly going to help it. And then when you add in everything else about improving the skills provision, you improve the affordability of homes, you align skills into industry, and you support those communities, you start putting those 5, 6, 7 elements together, that's when you do have an impact. And that's what we're doing, working across 5, 6 different areas to actually improve it. So I take it all on board, and I will do. But I feel like we are doing quite a lot, but there's obviously always more to do.
Given what we've discussed, which is the 180-degree problem that the coast always about, would you
Microphone's
yeah,
gone.
sorry, a proper national coastal strategy? Because one of the arguments around things like the A64 and other roads, I mean, basically my division connects the A165 to the A64. They've all got similar problems. If you actually start saying, right, how do we do this on an economic basis? Because you find all these problems, actually having a proper strategy, it actually will by default support the case for the A64. Because eventually you start saying, how do I connect these places? It's great that, I mean, I'm aware of the boat lift project. I mean, hopefully that will come off. But again, if you're bringing in product on shore to a harbour, you still got to transport it. And you still come down to these things. You're right, there are a lot of things you're talking about, skills, everything else. But if you're building houses, you still got to transport materials. It comes down to, and as somebody said, actually, I was watching City of York's meeting last night, and as one councillor said, you can have all the best buses in the world, but you still need roads to run them on. You can't say, I'll have better buses, but I'm not going to invest in the roads to run them. So you really do. I fully get where you're coming from, but I think the person who summed it up best this week was the MP for Peterborough, who talked about the Green Book. They're loyal to the government, but they were able to explain why it didn't work for their residents. You should be able to do that, and you should be on national television explaining why it doesn't work for us as well. And I wish you well, I genuinely do, but we need to really, really bang the drum about this. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Michelle. So, Steve.
Yeah, you've already answered a couple of questions already. I'm picking a different tack completely, apart from one small question about the A64. Is when we talk about the A64, what are we talking about? To Scarborough or just to Claxton? Because as we had last year in the ACC meeting, when I put this to Kevin, he said it's not going to happen anywhere further than Claxton anyway. And he said that in the meeting. So I think we need some clarity on exactly what is being lobbied here and the politics that is being played here as well. I think it's just not helping any residents in Filey, Malton, anywhere. But the questions I have actually is to try and ask you. We met with the farmers group last week, Claire Wise and a partner, and we discussed the inheritance tax situation, but the SFI situation is more of a concern, I think, with our landscapes partnership. with our landscape and nature restoration projects, because we need the regenerative farming and the payments aren't going to come forward for 18 months. Will you lobby for a quicker action on that so we can deliver some of the natural capital projects? And my other question was actually, and I'm surprised the SDGs came up in these questions, because being the person that introduced the SDGs to North Yorkshire and being told that they're only going to use them once in the council plan and not use them for ongoing monitoring, which we're pushing back at the moment against the council, particularly with and looking at, because full council said in the recommendation, ongoing monitoring using the SDGs, that's now being pushed back. Will you be using them to monitor progress year on year, or at least every couple of years, so we can look at what the sustainable development goals are really, that we're meeting the sustainable development goals going forward?
So thanks for your question again. So is that working? I have a red light on. Yeah. Okay. I'll come a bit nearer. I'll bring that nearer. Whatever. There we are. Yeah, so I was frustrated as much as anyone about the quickly how DEFRA sort of how that was communicated, shall I say. It wasn't good enough, absolutely. We are commissioning a farming review as we speak, so that's with our Grow Yorkshire arm of the Cumbria Authorities. Of those who don't know, we have a Grow Yorkshire arm that's particularly focusing on farming, so that's representation from the NFU, the CLA, the Yorkshire Agricultural Society and others, and we're in the process of that review being commissioned now, and that's taking in all the factors in around what is impacting farming and the whole system. So that's things like inheritance tax, the sustainability element, the impact of Brexit, the impact of energy prices, the impact of flooding, the whole spectrum. So we actually understand when we say we are prioritising that, what does that mean, and how then we move forward and actually go and support it. So we've already had a project run that's supported 30 farms and on a sustainable farming program of 30, which has been really good, but it's only 30. I don't know how many farms there are in North Yorkshire, but there's a lot more than 30. But we're looking at that as a project that we can really ramp up, and that's one of the ideas of having our priorities go to government. This is where our sector strengths are. We've already done this piece of work as a bit of a trailblazer. It's worked really well. Now, DEFRA, can we have X amount of money to go and develop this as a region wide? So how farms can be not only more sustainable as in the amount of farm they produce, but actually also how they can be more environmentally in that process as well. Because we speak to a lot of farmers and they do want to do this, but they need the long term. But yeah, that bit. But also they need the long term support. They know that this is not going to be pulled away in 5 minutes time. They're going to have to completely rechange the way they do farming, which is kind of the feeling I get is the way it's been done forever. They'll start going down a road of something, and then 18 months later it gets pulled away and they have to revamp. And farming doesn't work on a 6-month, 12-month process. It works on a decade process, doesn't it? So us coming in now and really prioritising that, we hope we're giving that confidence that we are backing this whole sector, and we're putting that, but particularly around sustainability. So as you'll know, our plan to get to net zero by 2034, the farming element and how we use our land is going to be a really big part of that, because we've got so much of it. So it's a really key element, and we hope we're giving that confidence into them. But I've been frustrated, I'll say in a mild way, at the communication from DEFRA on this. It hasn't been good enough, and we have lobbied government on that element and saying the SDG. I don't have an answer on that right now, but in terms of the team and our net zero team and Katie Thomas, who I know you know very well, and our team there, they really are, and I hope you'll support me in saying this, they're incredibly good and incredibly passionate, incredibly on this, and working with both authorities as well. We are really determined to get to net zero and really be a much more sustainable region. And that is not just how we use our land, it's how we look at our transport, it's how we look at our housing, which is why the retrofit strategy come into that as well. The transport strategy is really playing into that as well. So we will be monitoring it as a combined authority, whichever way we can and see fit and can do so along that process, because it's all well and good saying things like you want to get to net zero by 2034, but yeah, and you have to understand what kind of road you're going on at any point in time. Is what we're doing actually making a difference or not? Are we going down the wrong route or not? So certainly the tracking and monitoring of the process will be key to it, and that's why we've had this refresh now, actually, because the original route map was done 18 12 to 18 months ago, possibly something like that. And things have changed so much in that time. So where we're going to be in another 3 or 4 years' time, so a constant view of what that route map is probably going to be needed as well, because as industries change, as tech changes, as whatever else changes as well, as how we build houses changes as well. So yeah. I mean, if I'm
Microphone, Steve. Yeah.
So I'll use my mic. So on the table at the moment was just to Claxton, and we argued last year that it at least should be to Malton. No offence to Filey over here, but and we were told, well, that's never going to happen in that meeting at ACC last year. So I know the political football of it is causing problems, and I did to Scarborough. If it's 300 million to Claxton, I mean, Kevin said it's probably about 500-600 million to Malton. We're talking billions for it to go to Scarborough. So I think we should have some honesty around the whole discussion, to be honest, about where people are calling for it to be and everything else. And it's not a question, it's more of a statement that let's have some honesty for our residents about the conversation, because we see it on social media and I was like, oh, we should do it here. And people think 300 billion is for the whole of Scarborough, and it's not.
Just if Chair, I may just come back on David, that point. That's my frustration with it. Is this isn't something that's come up in the last 6 months since I've been in post. This has been around for a long time, but no one seems to really have that clear. This is exactly what we want. This is what it's going to be. I've asked for that from people who have raised this with me in a political sense, and I haven't had it. So all I'm saying is that, as my understanding is, when people say dual the A64, what does that mean? How far are you going? And then the difference between doing it for 5 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles, as you said, you start going into the billions, and then you start going, well, actually, for that, you could, for that kind of money, what you could do around train stations and bus improvements, it would be massive, So, and then that impacts the whole of the region, not just that section. So again, this is my frustration. If it's of such imperative that's been going around for so long, where is the actual solid business case, the details of exactly what you want, how much it's going to cost, how much it's going to, that doesn't seem to be there. And that's my frustration, is we want to dual it, it's going to cost this much money. Well, is it because you don't have any workings of it?
I'm going to bring Caroline back in because she asked the original question and asked for the dualling, so maybe she'll give some clarification of what she meant by dualling.
So there was a plan. There was plans drawn up. We worked with National Highways England, as they're now called, National Highways. I can never remember which iteration they are, frankly. And the whole point is that the A66 wasn't done in one hit. It's been an incremental improvement across the east-west connectivity at that point and we want the same thing for the A64. And we accept, I hear what Councillor Mason is saying. However, we accept that actually to do it at one hit is going to be a huge project costing a huge amount of money. So let's do the incremental challenges and get them on board so that we can start to do what we've done on the A66. It's worked. The A66 is terribly successful, but there are pinch points. There are pinch points on the A64. What we've got to do is try and iron those out. There was a plan. There was a scheme. It was costed. It never went anywhere. And that's what we need. And I hear what you're saying about you can get a lot of bus for and trains for that amount of money, but you can't put frozen chips in boxes on buses and trains to get them to deliver to wherever they've got to go. We need to be able to transport the goods that are made here and the industry that works here out into the wider network. And right now the A64 is a massive stumbling block. So let's do the incremental changes and get it going and get it moving, because the pinch point right now is Topgrove.
Okay, thanks, Caroline. Thanks for that clarification. Greg.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to resist the temptation to weigh in on the A64.
I'd appreciate that.
But I am going to ask a few questions about the alternatives, because what you said, Mr. Mayor, is that you'd rather spend the money on active travel, buses and railway stations. And that means that people in my patch in Kirkmorside and the Dales, and I suspect a lot of other patches that are represented here today, are hearing that you're going to spend nothing on them. You haven't got anything for them, because frankly, active travel isn't going to cut it for people in Kirby Moorside. It takes, and buses are no good to us if they come once every couple of hours. It's not a credible service for people to get to work and to get to where they need to be. And the nearest railway station is at least half an hour away, but in parts of my patch is nearly an hour and a half away from. So really isn't really a factor. We are going to still require good quality roads where we can get reasonably from A to B, and one or two minibuses that come and pick you up and take you to a doctor's appointment. They're welcome for the people who use them, but they're not an answer to the transport needs of the majority of people in the rural parts of North Yorkshire. They're going to continue to need to use cars, and we need to remember that. And I'm very much in favour of trying to head towards net zero and net negative. That would be brilliant. That's part of my job on the council, is to push us in that direction. But we need some realism on people's lives. They need to be able to get to work, and they're going to need roads for a long time yet.
Again, I'll reaffirm my position going back a little bit. What I have money and control over is buses, active travel, and some real say into rail. I don't have a checkbook for tens of hundreds of millions of pounds for roads. We do have 16.6 million extra that's going into pothole repairment this year, on top of the money that we'd already have got, and that's what I've got money for, and that's what it's going into. So repairing the roads. I have no doubt, spending the last 10 months doing tens of thousands of miles, that the car is still the dominant mode of transport in North Yorkshire. I've said that before, and I'll say it again, and I'll continue to say it. That said, we have to improve the public offering of transport, the improvement of walking, cycling and wheeling across the region, and particularly looking at things like road safety, particularly around places like schools and crossings. So that's what we're dominating our money and our powers over, because that's what I have money and powers over. I don't have a checkbook of £2 billion for improving and building new roads. We will continue to press government the importance of roads and things like drawing the A64 and the continuing work of the A66. But currently, I don't have that money to do that. And I'm not sure government has £2 billion lying around to do those two projects currently. So I take your point that some of our areas, bus provision and rail provision, is always going to be very difficult because of the rurality of the region, which is why we need to support people like Moors Bus, Dales Bus, Filey and others, how we need to think innovative around our stations. So if we have a station, can we have a bus operating that works a circumference of 5, 6, 7 miles of that, so people can have those central stations and more of a transport hub, so they can go on to the wider regions. So we are developing plans like this, but the car is still going to be a dominant mode of transport. It just is. That's fact. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we can do both at the same time. We can press the government on the importance of roads infrastructure. We can spend money on repairing the roads, as we put extra money in this year to do so. But we can also do all this. And if we do all this, it will move people en masse more sustainably in a more environmentally friendly way. It will take strain off the roads because more people are using on mass bus, rail and other options, and it will give people freedoms to move around, that they may not drive 5 days a week, they might drive 4 days a week, and that impact on our region is ginormous. And it's not going to be fit for everyone. I understand that, and I can see it that you're not happy with that response, but it's the fact that there are options where we can do that and we can improve it, and people want to have an option where you have a bus that comes daily. Yes, I get it. People aren't going to rely on that. We've got an option now to improve that reliability and improve the amount of buses that do come into an area, which hasn't been done previously. And now we have some extra money and some powers to go and do that. And that's what we're doing. So that's what I have powers, and that's what I have money over. If I don't have powers and money over something, there's not much I can do about it other than lobby it and the importance of it. So we're doing that, and we're doing this at the same time.
Thank you very much. Dan.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll try and be very brief if I can, so I see the time. As you know, a lot of our renewable energy comes down from Scotland and comes down the big pipe from Teesside to York. And there are various proposals at the moment for battery storage facilities, which is the right thing to do for sustainable futures and all the rest of it. And I hear what you're saying about where you have money and power, but also your ability to lobby. What lobby and what influence can you have on making sure that those battery storage facilities are put in the best strategic place, particularly for the residents of York and North Yorkshire?
So as you'll know, a lot of this comes down to like a local planning thing, which we don't have say over. We do have some, we have some lobbying and some influence possibly. I think it's really important that we're looking at the land use as well, though, and making sure they're put in the right place on the right source of land. We have obviously high quality arable land that should be used, in my opinion, still for farming and food production, but it's also looking at where those potential sites are to have those. So where it is potential to have battery storage, where it is potentially to have solar panel fat and all the rest of it. So I think we have a moral duty, maybe possibly something around that, about how where they are being used and making sure they are being put in the right location. Again, it does come down to like a local planning, which we don't have say over, but it's certainly that we will be looking at a review of what the capabilities of our region are. So we're actually doing that piece of work now, which is something that the London Mayor has done, has almost got ahead of the game with Great British Energy and actually looking at what their capabilities are in their region for around things like battery storage, around solar, on and offshore wind and others. And we're actually going to be probably doing a review of the same thing, but taking into consideration where things like battery storage can go, where on and offshore wind can go, and all this kind of stuff. So it's more just putting a piece together of where we think the capabilities are and having a voice on that and what our capabilities in our region are. But it does come down to a local planning thing still in that context.
Thank you very much, Dan. Lindsay.
Thank you, Meske, for coming to see us today. It's really good to have you here and openly discuss and let you listen to what the local people in the area think. So it's evident that there's an awful lot of good work that's being done, and I applaud you for that. And obviously, we all need you to succeed because, like Sam said, we want our residents to succeed. And just to say that I'm privileged, Michelle, to sit on the combined ONS committee, and the coast is brought up at every single meeting, and I will keep reinforcing that. And I think it's important, Mayor, that you do take the coast seriously. Transport is a vital part of our rural area, and it is not like York, it is completely different, so we need a different model. And I'm really pleased that that is on your radar. And just to wade into the A64 debate, it was an absolute tragedy that it wasn't dualled in the last 14 years, an absolute tragedy. But we're here where we are now. My question is about affordable homes. New homes, affordable homes. They must be affordable for people to be able to live and stay in the area that they love, and this will help everyone. But my problem is that our infrastructure at the moment is creaking, especially in all of our rural towns. Pickering, Kirkby, Helmsley, Thirsk, they're all suffering the same. So what we need, you've mentioned about infrastructure, which is so important because, as you rightly say, the car will still be on the radar and we've got to change and accommodate that. So in brief, because I don't want, chapter and verse and I's dotted and T's crossed, but what is your strategy about how we can improve the infrastructure? What does it mean, improve the infrastructure? I just need to get my head around, because people are saying, and social media is rife with, well, yeah, build loads of new homes, but we can't cope. We can't cope at the moment. So on one hand, they want the new homes. Everybody wants new homes, affordable new homes, but how are we going to cope with that? So thank you very much. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burt. So we're developing a strategic place partnership with Homes England, and obviously working with both local authorities, because the infrastructure is the part of it. When we talk about infrastructure, it's not just the road provision, it's things like how it's connected to the grid, the water, the waste, everything else comes with it as well. What provision is going to be around about schools provision, the GP perhaps as well. So we're developing that place partnership now of Homes England to factor all that in. No one wants to be building homes in the middle of nowhere that have got no connectivity, that have got no access to anything, because that doesn't work. We need to be building communities, and it's really sort of emphasising all that. And so it's bringing our transport strategy into that as well. It's bringing our strategic homes plan together to look at that all in the realm. So rather than looking at things in isolation of just housing and then just transport and then just skills, it's actually doing that piece all collectively. So it's all been taken into consideration. Just on the affordability of homes bit, we're also working with the York and North Yorkshire Housing Partnership to hopefully be the first combined authority that actually has affordable home standards that we make people adhere to. So we're not building homes that are not fit for purpose, that've got tiny box rooms that aren't of high energy efficiency and all the rest of it. So we want to be the first combined authority, really puts that in precedence, because we want to be building homes that are the right homes in the right places, but of the quality that our people deserve. So we're also doing that piece as well. But it's looking at, instead of looking at things in silos, when we're doing a strategic plan with Homes England, it's actually looking at in the realm and what it means around the infrastructure in terms of the actual road infrastructure, but then things like the connectivity to the grid, the connectivity to what and everything else that comes with it, rather than just building dormant villages in the middle of nowhere that just exacerbate the problems we have of moving people around. We also, just if I can expand on one bit, Chair, as well, we're also looking at those growth corridors and actually where those key developments could come from, i.e. the York to Scarborough rail line, and looking at developments around there, taking into consideration things like Malton, things like Seamer, and where we can look at developments around those areas, because again, linking in people directly into a rail line, which is only a matter of hundreds of meters away, whatever, then you can develop a bus system or an active travel provision that then moves people to those transport hubs. So then you can move people more connectively, rather than living 15 miles away from a train station and having to drive on, say, the A64. If you're living on those corridors, you are much more better connected. So the work that North Yorkshire have done, particularly on their local plan strategy about where those developments are, we can identify those and look at how they could be identified as the housing developments going forward, because they're better connected to the infrastructure that's already there.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David. So, sorry, were you going to say something? No. I was absolutely going to say.
Here all day.
Yeah, I was going to thank you
we
for.
have got to be in York for just after 12.
Absolutely. I was just going to thank you for both yourself and James attending this morning. Appreciate your candour and answering all of our questions, and we'll look forward to seeing an update in a year's time. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
So with that, we'll just take a 5-minute comfort break and let the Mayor and James depart, and then we'll go back into session. Right, everybody, can we reconvene, please? Everybody, can we take our seats, please? Herding cats. Sam. Steve. Right, thank you, everybody. So now we move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is public questions and or statements. So I'd like to ask Councillor Peter Chapman to come forward. And Peter, you have a statement for us, I believe. Just press the green button and then the red light should hopefully come on and then we're good to go.
Thank you, Chair. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at this meeting. I'm here to highlight a number of road safety issues of concern to the residents of Shipton and for your consideration of 2 proposals which we hope to address these concerns. The 2 proposals are a request for buffer speed restrictions north and south of the village of Shipton and a request for a pedestrian controlled crossing in the village. Shipton is a relatively small village with a population of around 800 people, and we're positioned at the southern end of what was formerly Hamilton district and borders York City. In the village, we have a primary school, 2 care homes, community centre, village pub, and a considerable range of different businesses. The village is bisected directly by the A19 trunk road, and it's one of only 2 villages on the A19 in North Yorkshire that's not been bypassed. The A19 through Shipton is also used as an alternative route to the A1, particularly when there's incidents or congestion affecting the A1. And over recent years, traffic volumes have increased very highly, and the A19 is used as an alternative route to the A1. So we have had problems over recent years when the A1's been closed and the village has been log jammed with traffic. The parish council has funded the installation of vehicle activated signs in the village within the 30-mile speed area, both on the A19 and the 2 side roads that lead onto the A19. Recent data shows that there is a total of more than 4,000 vehicles a day passing through Shipton on the A19. The data from the VAS cameras is publicly available and can be accessed on the Shipton community website. So our first request is for buffer speed restrictions. And there are two locations, one north of the village and one south of the village, where there are frequent accidents and incidents. Both these locations are currently subject to the 60-mile-an-hour national speed limit. To the north, there's a crossroads where Chapman's Lane and Ambler's Lane join the A19, and the approach to these crossroads from the north has partially restricted visibility. Some 200 yards south of these crossroads is Brooks Garage and Shop, together with a number of residential businesses and buildings, sorry. And there are regular accidents and incidents in this area. And I understand Councillor Keane has been to view this junction. To the south of the village, there's a turn off with a slip road from the northbound carriageway of the A19 onto Overton Road. Now, this slip road can be very confusing for drivers unfamiliar to the area, as the road markings are currently indistinct. So there's a problem there. We have had a recent fatality at that junction, and there are frequent accidents and incidents. So our proposal is that there should be 40-mile-an-hour buffer speed zones put in place north and south of the village. The only other village that's not bypassed on North Yorkshire is Thormanby, and Thormanby has a 60-40-30 buffer. So we believe Shipton should be treated the same. Our second request is for a pedestrian controlled crossing. Currently there are 4 crossing refuges throughout the length of the village. However, there are no carriageway markings to indicate crossing points to motorists. It's therefore hazardous for children and the elderly and everybody else to cross the road at peak times. We did have 5 refuges, but one was recently removed in order to provide access to a new housing development. So ironically, Shipton has more housing and people crossing the A19, but fewer places to do it. So our proposal is for pedestrian controlled crossing to replace the current refuge just north of the Station Lane junction of the A19. This will enable children attending the Forestry Gulches School on Station Lane a safe crossing point. So over the years, we have made repeated representations to North York Council, County Council and the police regarding road safety, but we've been unsuccessful so far. The main reason for refusal being that these incidents and accidents do not trigger the KSI criteria, killed and seriously injured, and that the proposed remedies are either impractical or unaffordable. So we would like to hope that our current representations have a more favourable hearing compared with the negative pushback that we've experienced up to date. So we would like to engage in discussion as to what measures could be feasible. Finally, we would ask that full consideration is given to the funding solutions as part of the community benefits from the Yorkshire Green Infrastructure Project, over and above the £20,000 limit for individual projects. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much there, Peter. So we have a response, I think, on Teams from Stuart Grimston. So Stuart, if you, and I can't see you because you're behind me, is he there? So Stuart, if you could reply to Councillor Chapman, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So during the summer of 2024, officers received communications from Shipton Vibe Edinburgh Parish Council and Sir Alex Shelbrooke MP on behalf of the Parish Council to request both a 40-mile-an-hour buffer zone on the approaches to the village and the installation of a controlled pedestrian crossing facility in the village. It should be noted that officers are sympathetic to the concerns of the Parish Council and have investigated their requests and have responded with the following detail. Firstly, 40-mile-an-hour buffer zones. When assessing a proposed reduction in a speed limit, we follow Department for Transport guidelines, the setting of local speed limits document published in 2014, in order to maintain a fair and consistent response. The DFT suggests that in order for a 40-mile-an-hour limit to work, there should be a degree of roadside development, meaning that a driver would see the need for the reduction in speed limit and comply. There is little or no development, either north or south of Shipton by Benningborough on the A19, and consequently no change in environment evident to the driver. Similar reductions in speed limit with no change in environment in the county have not resulted in the desired reduction in vehicle speeds, and any speed limit that relies on police enforcement to work will fail, as this is not a sustainable long-term option, nor does it comply with the DFT document. The existing 40-mile-an-hour buffer zones referred to by Mr. Chapman at Thormanby were introduced many years ago before the current guidelines were introduced by DFT, and are in effect a legacy issue on the network. Furthermore, North Yorkshire Police have confirmed that they would not support a 40-mile-an-hour buffer at Shipton by Benningborough. Given this response from North Yorkshire Police, the local highway authority does not propose to pursue the introduction of 40-mile-an-hour restrictions here. However, North Yorkshire Council is preparing to introduce a new speed management strategy to guide a proactive review of all speed limits across the network, and this is expected to be approved in the next few months. In 2016, work was carried out to improve signage, junction markings and visibility at the junction of Overton Road with the A19 to the south of Shipton by Benningborough. And in 2019, a scheme to improve signage and road markings around the junction of Station Lane was implemented. The effectiveness of these improvements will continue to be monitored. The Chapman's Amblers Lane junctions with the A19 have been investigated as a high-risk site, and a scheme to improve signage in the area has been introduced. Item 2, request for a controlled pedestrian crossing. Investigations into this request showed that there is no feasible location for a controlled pedestrian crossing on the A19 within the village due to the position of the existing bus stops and driveways. The positioning of a controlled crossing facility would impede the operation of the bus stops and accesses, including access to the Dorney Arms. Existing on-street parking would ultimately be displaced within the village to the inconvenience of adjacent householders. There are currently several pedestrian refuges provided within the village to aid pedestrians wishing to cross.
Thank you, Stuart. So it's interesting about the speed management strategy. Yeah, I'll get to that, Nikki. Yeah, it's interesting about the speed management strategy. So I think we probably need a bit more information on that. So, Councillor Chapman, do you have a supplementary?
Well, I have a comment. Yes, we've got the same pushback that we've always had. Can we please have a dialogue which we can move forward with to ensure that we look at what feasible options there are? Okay, we don't accept these answers, but we want to have a dialogue and find out what is possible, not what cannot be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think if we can send you the details of the speed management strategy, that might be helpful, Nikki. So if we can pick that up from Highways, and we'll send you that through. So you may want to feed into that strategy proposal as well, Peter. Thank you very much. But thank you for coming today. Thank you for your time. It's much appreciated. Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you to Peter for coming today. I've got to say, I'm massively underwhelmed by the response from Highways. What the community can't come to terms with is the fact that a village just up the road, a fraction of the size of Shipton by Benningborough, has got a 40-mile-an-hour buffer zone. I drove through here this morning, came through Welburn, which has a 40-mile-an-hour buffer zone, and this about the not being built up areas, well, that just doesn't stack up when you compare it with Thornbury, and this is causing quite a bit of disaffection now in the community. I appreciate we've been given a standard textbook answer, but we're looking for solutions here, not just knockbacks, because this is what the book says. It really is a frustration. There's been a lot of comment about the A64 today. I don't think that North Yorkshire get the A19. it is the main link road between York and the northeast of England. You know, this is a major issue. We've had sadly fatalities already this year. We've had 2 so far. And I just don't think we're being given the priority and the respect that the community deserves. So I'd ask North Yorkshire Highway to go away, engage and come back with some solutions rather than just this. We've been doing this for 2 years now, and there's a degree of frustration, bordering on resentment now building up in the community. And if we can't look after our people as councillors, then why are we here? So I would encourage you to just come back with some solutions rather than just knockbacks. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Malcolm. Councillor Dadd, I think you're indicating.
Sorry, Nigel, it's just quickly to, I suppose, to declare an interest, given Thormanby's featuring high on the agenda, and just to make clear, as I do every time people cite Thormanby as an example, it's the village I live in, but the measures that were put in place, and indeed the original VAS signs were put in place well before I was elected to the authority. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you very much for that clarity. Yeah, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. As we've alluded to, Thormanby is in my patch, and I agree it is very useful that we have now got the 40 miles buffer zone. And I agree, I echo everything that Councillor Taylor said about the importance of the A19. After the 66 and the 64, the A19 should be next in the target. As we all know, traffic coming off the ferries at Hull, if they're going up north, they don't go up the A1, they go round York and come up the A19. As Councillor Taylor's alluded to, we have had 2 serious fatalities further north on the A19 on the outskirts of Thirsk, and I was actually approached by the media for my comments on the safety of the A19 as a result of that. It is a very, very busy road, and it needs to get onto the agenda for doing something serious about.
Caroline.
I just wanted to pick up because obviously someone's mentioned speed management strategy, and I don't know about the rest of the members here, but I didn't know it was going on, and we've not been asked to contribute. And I think we should be able to contribute to that strategy and have those discussions with officers if there's a strategy being developed.
Yeah, so I think that's something, Nikki, we can pick up on as to whether, you know, we can, as an area committee, can understand what that strategy, the development of that strategy is, and whether we can feed into that, especially regarding the Shipton situation. Sam.
Again, I do use the A19 on regular occasions, and I've used it for many years. And I am surprised that the officer didn't mention that after the Mr. Chapman had mentioned that one of the refuges had been closed for an additional housing development, and also on top of that there is a school nearby. You know what I mean? And these are the people that we should be protecting. The traffic on the A19 isn't people in cars, it's people in lorries. You know what I mean? These won't just do a little bit of damage, they'll do serious amounts of damage. And it's about time something was done. And officers ought to be working with the likes of Shipton by Bemborough Parish Council to sort this solution out. And instructions should be given to that effect. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Stuart, have officers met with the parish council on the ground?
Yes, there's been Paul Crosby from the local team has met with Councillor Taylor and the parish recently.
Welcome.
Yeah, I just come back on that. That was more from an engineering point of view regarding maintenance of road surfaces. I think we need a more strategic update from for the actual projects that we want to be developed for the road safety. So yes, Paul has been on the ground, but that was very much focused on maintaining what we've got and not restoring what we've lost.
Okay, thanks, Malcolm. So, Malcolm, if you can take that up with then Stuart, I think offline, and also probably perhaps pick up on the speed management strategy and see how that might influence the situation at Shipton. I think that's probably the way forward. Right, thank you very much. So I'll
Yeah.
now move on.
Can I put
Sorry.
Hovingham on that list then?
Yes, of course. Yes, yeah. We'll note that as well. Yeah, yeah. We'll develop the list. So we've now had the second question we've had from Simon Thackeray, and Lindsay will kindly read that out. It's a slightly abridged version of the written version you have, just to fit it into the time. Lindsay.
So members, you have in front of you the full transcript, and I've cut it down with the author's permission to 3 minutes, just to have it on record that it has been read out. So thank you, members. The papers for the 28th of March Area Committee flag up once again the positive outcome of the 7.5 tonne HGV weight restriction over Norton level crossing, and the good news that the HGV restriction has been successful in helping achieve compliance with the UK legal limit for the concentration of nitrogen dioxide in the recently revoked Malton Air Quality Management Area. North Yorkshire's Council's Division Officer, Dr. Kevin Carr, confirmed there is no intention to remove the current HGV weight restrictions, given its success in helping to achieve compliance with the UK nitrogen dioxide objectives. HGV represents only 5% of the traffic, but they are responsible for 40% of the nitrogen dioxide in the breathable air. And it does not, therefore, take a mathematical genius to work out that removal of the HGV weight restriction over Norton level crossing would lead to an increase in the concentration of the lethal NO2. The only means at our disposal is to remove the source of the problem, i.e. remove more HGVs and cars from the towns by providing the necessary highway infrastructure to enable this to happen. The importance of the 7.5 tonne HGV weight restriction over the Norton level crossing in reducing the concentration of NO2 must not be underplayed. However, North Yorkshire Council failed to monitor and enforce the weight restriction on the Norton level crossing and Highfield Road during the whole of 2024, which means the residual air pollution in Castlegate and the centre of Malton was far greater and more harmful than it should have been. By deliberately deciding not to monitor and enforce the restriction, NYC is by default deliberately and knowingly deciding to damage the health of the public. Now, the HGV drivers do know that they won't be prosecuted, so they ignore the restriction and carry on going over. And this is not a proper air quality management, and it is wholly unacceptable. It's bewildering to me, and that's Simon, me as well. Whilst York and North Yorkshire share the mayor in common, the air quality improvement aspirations of the two co-joined areas are so out of kilter. So the question is, will North Yorkshire Council please revise its air quality action plan to reflect and align with the more ambitious air quality improvement aspirations of the York City Council Air Quality Action Plan, which is the AQAP4, which is striving to achieve compliance with the more stringent World Health Organization Global Air Quality Guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lindsay, for reading that out. So I have a reply from Dr. Kevin Carr, who's the North Yorkshire Council Scientific Officer. Dr. Carr says, highways have been taking independent advice on the issue of air quality in Malton/Norton and the HGV restriction from the consultant's WSP. At this moment in time, the restriction remains in place to allow consideration of the next steps in terms of the restriction. The Council will continue to enforce the restriction proportionately as resources allow, as it does with all weight restrictions. A further report will be brought to the next meeting of the ACC on this issue. There are no plans to amend the Council's Air Quality Action Plan at this stage.
Thank you. And there is a supplementary, Chair.
Yes.
So Given the confirmed success of the 7.5 tonne HGV weight restriction over Norton level crossing in reducing the level of NOT in the breathable air in the Malton area, please will the council now remove the word temporary from the order and make the restriction permanent, and therefore commence and maintain the proper enforcement?
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll feed that supplementary back to Dr. Carr, and obviously there's going to be a report coming forward next meeting. Steve.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, this came up at Transport Environment Committee, and Lindsay, I wonder whether we should actually officially propose that as councillors now. It was intimated 6 months ago that it won't be lifted. So I think removing the temporary, to make it permanent, will send a signal down to the town anyway.
Yeah, so Steve, I think what we need to do is feed that back to Dr. Carr to let him to respond to that, because I think given that he hasn't had a chance to respond to that, we'll let him respond to that first. But it is coming to the next ACC, so you can put that proposal forward at that point once we've heard back from Dr. Carr.
Well, I'll feed in the email I got from him saying that they won't support the lifting of the ban, which I got of him 3-4 months ago. So I think that is already been intimated. By the officer.
So yeah, I'm very happy for you to bring that forward next time. Thank you very much, Lindsay. So we now come to item 7, which is an update on the North Yorkshire and York local nature recovery strategy. And our speaker is Tim Johns, who's a senior policy officer for sustainability and the environment. Tim, are you with us?
I'm ready and present.
Thank you very much.
Check that the slides are available for the councillors.
We've got the written printed slides in front of us.
Do you have the link to the PowerPoint? If not, I can share my screen.
If you could share the screen, that'd be very helpful.
Okay. Just bear with me a second then. I wasn't prepared for that, so if you just give me 30 seconds.
Yeah, we have them this end.
You've got them on the slide deck there. Fabulous.
We do,
That's great. That's great. Okay. When you're ready, are we good to go?
Yeah, good to go.
Great stuff. Yeah. Well, thank you, committee, for the opportunity to present to you today. As a reminder, the LNRS, we came to the all-member session at County Hall in November 2023 to give members an introduction to the LNRS. And my head of service, Sean Berry, gave an update last spring. So we're essentially giving you a brief update on work since spring 2024. I've been listening into the session with David Scaife, the Mayor, earlier, and would just like to say that we hope that the LNRS will be able to deliver some of the policy aspirations of the Mayor and the Combined Authority, particularly around net zero, route map to carbon negative, future farming and green skills and jobs, and not least connecting people to the outdoors for their health and well-being. So I think perhaps you could move to the first slide, please. Should give you contents. You'll see there that what I would hope to cover on the slide presentation, and then if you could move to the next slide, which is the infographic on stakeholder engagement. Is that coming up? Is it on the screen?
No, it's not.
Okay.
We've got them printed in front of us.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Really, just to take you through, the all the engagement we've been through with a large number of webinars, member sessions like this, in-person events, and then the next slide along there takes you through the different snapshot of all the stakeholders that we've engaged with. Along the top of the slide there, you'll see the 4 supporting authorities, which are Natural England, City of York Council, and the 2 national parks. And then the next row down is our advisory group, steering group, and last but not least are a number of the other stakeholders we've engaged with. I assume that the slides aren't being presented. So the next in the slide deck is a photo of myself working with the Skipton Youth Council, and we've done 2 sessions with Skipton Youth Council and similarly with York Youth Council, just to introduce them to local nature recovery strategy and then give them an update. And we also did some practical exercises with them. The next in the slide deck is the engagement work we did with land managers and farmers. And I think what you have in front of you there is a map of the workshops we undertook with land managers and farmers across our geography. So we had 11 of those. The square symbols indicate the venues for the various workshops. And really what we were seeking to do was a listening exercise. We were hoping to understand the views of local land managers and farmers around how land had changed in the last 20 years, what they're currently doing for nature, and what are the barriers for going forward in terms of doing more for nature. And then later in the year, in November and December of 2024, we went back to most of those venues and with many of the same participants just to replay the findings of the earlier workshops and then take them through our method for mapping nature recovery across our geography. The next in the slide deck is a photo of one of the smaller workshops at Selby Orchard Mark. Just gives you a flavour of the events, very much around maps and post-its, very, very engaging. And then the next slide is around our priorities and measures. And I think it's a slide of where showing upland peat restoration amongst and just to say in a bit more detail, really that's a priority around restoring peat, obviously, and the benefits of that with carbon sequestration, and you can see that the action in the photo is around re-wetting the bog there and blocking the drainage channels. The next slide is just says essentially is a description of the photograph. So it's the what and why of nature recovery in that instance, improving the condition of upland peat to increase carbon sequestration. And the slide after that is the action. So what do we mean? What does that mean in practicality? And in that case, it's re-wetting the blanket bog in a particular geography using natural materials to block drainage channels. The next slide is the priorities that we've devised with our core stakeholders, and that was a long process through 2024. And you can see there are a total of 39 priorities across those different habitats, including farmland, wetland, and grassland. And it also picks up urban, rural, and coast in those themes. So the next slide is a photo of some of the wider benefits from improving our habitats. So you'll see some graphics there. It's a table. I'll just pick out 2 or 3 examples from that table. Pest and disease control. That's really around using nature to better address the issues of pests and diseases, creating that right habitats for them. Climate regulation. So many of our habitat proposals will be around improving woodland, wetland, grassland, and peatland. And by definition, they are stores of carbon, will help to absorb greenhouse gas emissions. And then the last item that I was going to talk about on that table there is managing flood risk and water quality. So again, lots of opportunities to slow the flow, to use nature to try and address some of those flood risk issues that we have across North Yorkshire and York. So I'm hoping you're still with me, but the next slide is should be just a flyer for the nature recovery map. And then we have 3 slides on the emerging map. So the first one of those is should be a map of our whole, almost all of our geography. And DEFRA has asked us to firstly map the core network. And what you can see there in blue are mostly across the national parks, and those are the sites dedicated for nature conservation, the SSSIs, and around the national parks you may also see smaller sites that tend to be rather disconnected. Those are the local nature reserves and the local wildlife sites, and you'll see on the map there a disconnect between the 2 national parks in terms of nature. So the last 2 on this, well, the last 2 maps in your pack there, what you'll see there hopefully is we've applied a light blue color to the core sites to start to link up and join, and then just to reassure you, an earlier presentation that I did to the Skipton and Ripon Area Committee was concerned that we'd be taking over good agricultural land for nature recovery. Certainly the intention is not to do that, and particularly avoiding grade 1 and grade 2 agricultural land. It's working very much with food production and existing farm businesses, but we think there's opportunity to sort of insert nature appropriately. Now the last slide in terms of the map there just starts to show you the bigger, better and more joined up theme that we're working to, and you'll be able to work out that it's an even more comprehensive connected network, and you will also be able to see the yellow graphic which shows the connections between the 2 national parks, and that's really been informed by our stakeholders who've got good knowledge on the ground. Those east-west links in yellow typically follow the water courses that are in our geography. The next slide is a slide from the Oxford Local Nature Recovery Strategy. They're some months ahead of us, and it's just an indication of how we plan to present this mapping in public, to the public on the web, and the opportunity for the public to drop a pin on the map, whether they agree, disagree, or would like have an observation or a comment to make. And then finally, I think what you have in front of you is the next steps really, which is around the aim to go to statutory public consultation at the end of May for 6 weeks, and then with a view to publication of the strategy in October. So I hope you managed to keep up with me there, but happy to try and take any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tim. That was most helpful. So first question I've got is from Caroline.
Yeah, thanks, Tim, for the presentation. I'm looking at the wider stakeholders, and I sit on the Yorkshire and Humber drainage boards, and I don't see them on the list. Now, I do know that they are in the process of doing peat restoration and working on sequestration as well. So I'm just wondering why you haven't had a conversation with them. Maybe you have, and they're just not on the list.
Yeah. Just to reiterate, it's just a snapshot. Obviously, I think we've engaged with probably nearly 200 stakeholders, so we wouldn't have space on the slide, but we have spoken with the integrated drainage boards, so had several conversations with them, just to reassure you.
Okay, thanks for that.
Sam.
Thank you for your presentation. What I'm a bit surprised about is the presentation. It seems to cut off in Scarborough, and there's no mention of Filey, which is a SSSI of Filey Brig. We've also got the start of the Wolds Way, and as far as flood risk goes, you know what I mean, Filey were flooded twice in the last 20 years, seriously. So, you know, have you been? Do you know where it is? You know, can I invite you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for the question. the issue we had with the map is we had to. I was hoping that the presentation would have been on the screen today, but the slide, it was really a case of getting the map into the slide, and finally it hasn't been left off intentionally. It's really just a case of can reassure you the strategy map will cover the whole of our geography.
Back on that, but you know, I mean, you've got to remember that there is one of the biggest triple SIs on the east coast there.
Yeah.
And also, you know, the start of the famous Wolds Way.
Yeah.
You know, it needs mentioning.
Yes, I mean, thank you for those comments. We'll make sure that those two items are picked up.
Thank you very much, Sam, for highlighting that omission. So, without any more questions, thank you very much, Tim, for your presentation, and hopefully that has been really helpful to members. But thank you for attending this afternoon, as it is now. Thank you very much. So we come to item 8 on the agenda, which is the work programme, and the question is on the Broadby project. What do members think about the timeline? Because the Yorkshire Water have advised that the beneficial completion is scheduled for the end of March, but the actual works will not finish until the end of September, October. So my sort of thinking is that we don't have that on the agenda until after the September, October. So we're talking about the whole thing. What do members feel? Steve?
I think there's a wider conversation to have with Yorkshire Water at the moment. I have a big issue with them now in my ward, in some other pumping stations, for instance, as well, where we have HGVs 6 times an hour going through one of the villages, moving slurry. Thank you, Caroline. That was going to say a different word then. Over to the sewage works, and it's not just there. It's Nunnington as well. So in George's ward, there seems to be the infrastructure seems very piecemeal. It's like, oh, we'll do a bit here because a lot of noise has been made about Broadby, and Simon has done a really good job over in Broadby to get the attention over 10 years, Lindsay, I think, probably longer. But I do think we need to have a conversation. I know the Transport Environment Committee are going to be calling them in, because particularly around some of the coastal pollution as well around Scarborough. So, but we need to be putting pressure as much as we can on all of it. You know, we've just had the local nature recovery update. Well, let's be honest, they're trying to link together with using the rivers. Well, half the rivers around here, we don't have any rivers above moderate, I don't think, because of the amount of pollution that's going in. So I think we need to be applying as much pressure as possible.
Thanks, Steve. Alison? Okay, thank you. That is noted. So yeah, so what I think we should do is then we should feed in, Nikki, those points of the other issues, and then ask for that to go on the agenda after September. But we'll pick up not just the Broadby one, but any others that members have issues on. Yeah.
So can I make put a point on this? Practical completion is happening a lot later because final completion is happening a lot later because the Yorkshire Water don't seem to know what they're doing. You know, they come in and they don't seem to understand that the water table rises and falls with the seasons. It's just, you know, that's their job. And yet they've, I mean, I want them to sort this muck out and to sort this so that we haven't got poo everywhere. We've also got a village with a roadblock in the middle of it for what's going to be the best part of 6 months. It's just a nonsense. They need to get their act together. And by waiting till later, we're losing the opportunity to tell them that they've dropped the ball here.
So is the feeling around the table that we get this on the June agenda? Yeah. Okay, right. We'll go for that then. Well, I think there was Steve has mentioned there, probably what Greg's mentioned. So if you can feed those into Nikki, she'll pass those on to Yorkshire Water, and then we'll ask for. Brilliant. Okay, so that's the way we'll do it, and we'll put it on the June agenda. Okay, items 9 and 10 are the written updates from Kevin and Alec. Does anybody have any points they want to raise now on those updates? Obviously, if there's any updates, you can either pass them through. If there's any questions, you can pass them through me or Nikki, or indeed you could go directly to their offices. So is everybody happy that we take those as read? Yeah. Great. Thank you. Okay, so schools update report. Have members any questions on that report? Steve?
Only really, because obviously we know there's a lot of debate around the homeschool transport policy, but and there's a lot of concern. I'm receiving emails all the time now from parents who, and I think we're trying to increase our subs for the appeals committee as well, from by all accounts. But my main concern really is what risk analysis has happened about the amount of pupils we may be shipping across the border to other authorities and then losing their funding. Now, are we losing that funding if those pupils are going across the board to the closest schools? I don't know why you look at me like that, because it's important. As far as I think we need to understand what the financial implications are of kids having to go to local closest schools over catchment schools and everything else. So I just want to know what the risk assessment has been on the funding implications properly, because as far as we know of pupils that are now having to go to schools in different authority areas. I think, as I understand, we're probably paying for the transport. So I just want to know some clarity on, do we lose the educational funding for that at the same time as paying for the transport across?
Yeah, Janet. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's actually all written in the report, and we do lose the income for those children. I think it's 2,500 that go across, but actually we gain income from, I think it's 5,000 people that we bring in. So actually we gain more than what we lose.
Yeah, fair point, and it's a fair answer, I think there.
Can I?
Yeah, Carl.
Can I just follow up on that? So
I don't know the exact figure, but it's about double the people that are coming in from out of area. Yeah, they're coming from out of area.
Okay, right. Okay, so you can challenge that, Dan, in the seminar. Okay, so item 12, climate change activity in Thirsk and Malton area. Members, any questions? Okay, so we'll note that report. Thank you very much. So, any other business which the chairman considers as a matter of urgency because of special circumstances? So I've had nothing to that effect. Steve?
Yeah, we did try and discuss the HGV situation. We were going to bring it back to the committee, and there was a proposal to bring in the Haulage Association at one point.
They were engaged with, but were unwilling.
So I still think we need to put it on the agenda to discuss the impact of HGVs, particularly. And again, I'm going to make it program my ward in particular, but it sounds to me that you've had some issues down the A19 and the impacts they have on our local villages. So I would like to put that back on the working agenda, please.
With HGV on rural roads, where there's been a change in policy for a farm.
George.
Thank you, Chair. On the HGV issue, obviously this committee has done some work involving the villages that Councillor Goodrick, Councillor Mason and myself represent, and that included some of the residents coming here asking questions, and there was some progress with planning that was done at the time. Yesterday, I coincidentally met with a member of the parish in Oswaldkirk, and he sent me an email that he asked me to read to thank the committee for listening to them at the time, and he was saying that they have noticed that the HGV movement seemed to have reduced during the antisocial hours late at night through the very, very early mornings, and they are not seeing big grain wagons going to and from Ian Mosey's mill outside of their operating hours. Occasionally there is an HGV moving, etc., and they know how much effort that the committee has put on to resolving this issue, and the effort is appreciated. So I just wanted to highlight this as an example of something that the committee has raised the issue, dealt had listened to the residents
Okay.
and put some.
All right. Thanks, St George. Okay, so we're going on a tangent here, but what we'll do is we'll
George, I think you maybe need to really reconnect with some of the residents, because I'm not, you're not in my ward, but I know the villages around that are not representing the same thing.
Okay.
It may be the parish council, but I think the other parish councils are still very, very, very much feeling the impacts locally. So
This is what I received from.
Okay.
Let's
So,
not.
yeah. All right. So what we'll do is we'll get an HGV update onto the work programme, and Nikki and I will discuss that afterwards. Lindsay.
Chairman, could that include about the restriction as well? That will all come through.
Yeah,
because-
sure. Yeah, we
because the
can include that.
Revens are coming through now because and they are getting fined.
We'll include that in, Lindsay. Great. So with that, I think that's the business dealt with today. So I'll call this meeting closed at 12:10 p.m. Thank you, members, for attending. Thank you.